polynomial equations and inequalities. This section is broken into two parts. Part A is going to be over solving polynomial equations, okay? So let's dive on in. So to begin with, in this section, we're going to review a technique that can be used to solve certain polynomials, and that is called the zero product property. So the zero product property basically means when you have two factors together, you can separate them into their own equations and solve from there. All right, so let's look at our first example here. So looking at the first example, we have 2x times x minus 4 times 5x plus 3 equals 0. Notice that in between each one I said times. That's because this is a factor, this is a factor, and this is a factor. Okay? So to solve this, we're going to take each factor and set it equal to 0. So we have 2x equals 0, we have x minus 4 equals 0, and we have 5x plus 3 equals 0. Now, once you've done that, you've now taken something that seemed like a big problem to solve and turned it into a fairly easy problem. So for the first one, we know that we would divide by 2, and we get x equals 0. So that's one solution. This one, we would add 4 to both sides, and we get x equals 4. On this one, we're going to subtract 3 and divide by 5 in order to get x by itself. So x equals 0 minus 3 is negative 3 divided by 5. And that's how the zero product property works. Now, the key thing here, notice, is that one side has to be equal to 0. So let's look at our next example. Our next example, we do not have factors. We have 4 terms instead of 2 to 3 factors. So in order to start here, the first thing we're going to have to do is factor. So we're going to factor. This is a 4-term polynomial, so we're going to try and factor it by grouping. So factoring this by grouping means that we're going to group 4x to the third minus x squared together plus negative 100x plus 25. When you're factoring by grouping, you're factoring each piece to find its GCF. So the GCF between these two is going to be x squared. The GCF between these two, my leading, is negative, and it's going to be negative 25. Okay, so when we factor out, we're left with x squared, 4x minus 1. We're factoring out negative 25. And we're left with 4x minus 1. Now they have a common binomial. We're going to factor out that common binomial. So we're factoring out 4x minus 1 and 4x minus 1. When we factor out 4x minus 1, we're going to be left with x squared and negative 25. So now we have two factors. Now we have two factors, and we're setting this equal to 0. So now we can apply the zero product. So because I have two separate factors, I can take 4x minus 1 and set it equal to 0. I can take x squared minus 25 and set it equal to 0. After setting them equal to 0, go through the same process of getting x by itself. In this case, we're adding 1 and we're dividing 4. That's going to cancel out the term and factor on this side, and we're left with x equals 0 plus 1 is 1, all over 4, gives us x over 4. On this one, we're adding 25, That cancels this out. Now notice this time we have a square. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. So we're taking the square root of this. So this canceled out, and we get x equals, and the square root of 25 is going to be plus or minus 5. When you take the square root of something, it produces a positive and a negative. So it's actually two answers. X equals positive 5 and x equals negative 5. Okay. So we've looked at an example where it wasn't factored and we had to factor, and we've looked at an example where it was factored. So let's talk about another example. What if it's not equal to 0? What do? Well, when it's not equal to 0, we're going to need to combine like terms to one side so that one side can be equal to 0. So we're going to make this side 0. In order to make this side 0, we have two things we need to do. We need to subtract 5x, and we need to add 7. What we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. So we have negative 5x and plus 7. Now once that's all said and done, so this was our step 1. These cancel out, this cancel out, and these combine to make 15x squared. And we have 3x minus 5x gives us negative 2x. We have negative 8 plus 7 gives us negative 1 equals 0. Okay, so step 1 was to make one side equal to 0. Step 2 is to factor. So in this case, we're now down to a quadratic. And you could factor, but we're going to practice this using the quadratic formula. So in this case, we're going to use the quadratic formula. Remember, the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so that's our quadratic formula. Remember your term, your coefficient with your x squared, that's your a. Your coefficient with your x is your b, and then your constant is your c. So we're going to plug those in to find our answer. So we end up with x equals negative b, which is negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so now we're going to keep simplifying this. So simplifying, we get a negative times a negative is a positive. So plus or minus the square root. And we're going to do the inside. So the inside, notice that there's a negative 4. Oh, I erased. Did I do that? Notice that we have a excuse me, a negative 4 and a negative 1. So when we multiply those two, they're going to become positive. So reading from what we have, a negative 2 squared is going to give us a positive 4. Negative 4 times negative 1 is a positive 4. 4 times 15 gives us 60. All over 2 times 15, which is 30. And we're going to keep going. So here we have 4 plus 60. So we have 2 plus or minus the square root of 64 all over 30. The square root of 64 is 8. 2 plus or minus 8 all over 30. Remember that plus or minus means that we have two problems happening. We have one that we're going to be adding and one we're going to be subtracting. So we have 2 plus 8 over 30. And we have 2 minus 8 over 30. 2 plus 8 is 10 over 30, which equals 1/3. And we have 2 minus 8, which is going to give us negative 6 over 30, which equals negative 1/5. Okay, so therefore our two solutions are 1/3 and negative 1/5. Okay, this also just to remind you that if these are our x's, that the factors that produce this would be, so for 1/3, it would have come from the factor of 3x minus 1. Because I would have to add the 1 and divide the 3. For the factor of negative 1/5, for x equals negative 1/5, it would have come from the factor of 5x plus 1. Because I would have had to subtract the 1 and divide the 5. And that's, if you chose a factor, then you would have came down to those two factors. But I'm saying at this point, just use the quadratic formula if you're solving because you're just looking for the x's. Okay? All right, so that's example number 3. Now let's look at example number 4. All right, example number 4, we're kind of in a tight spot. We can't apply the zero product because this does not equal 0, right? So we can't apply the zero product. You only can apply the zero product if it equals 0. This currently does not equal 0. So what do we have to do? We're going to have to actually distribute and go from there. So we're going to actually redo this. We're going to distribute. So first, we're going to distribute, aka we're going to use FOIL. So using FOIL, we get 3x squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 2 equals 4. Okay, so after that, now I can subtract 4. Now this side equals 0, so our new problem that we're working with is 3x squared, combining the middle, plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. So this is what we're working with. And now that we're down to a quadratic, that's where the quadratic formula comes in. So now we're going to use the quadratic formula. So using the quadratic formula, remember this is our A, this is our B, this is our C. Okay? So we have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So that gives us negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 plus, and that's 24, all over 6. 25 plus 24 gives us 49, so this equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 49 all over 6. The square root of 49 is going to give us 7, so we have negative 5 plus or minus 7 over 6. That plus or minus means that I have two things happening, right? I have negative 5 plus 7 divided by 6, and I have negative 5 minus 7 divided by 6. This gives us 2 over 6, which equals 1/3. This gives us negative 12 over 6, which equals negative 2. So our solutions would be 1/3 and negative 2. All right, so that is part A. Hopefully we're filling it and we're like, we can do part A.